I'm Eric Lipsy, and this is Galt University. Today, I'm here with Jennifer Plary, president of OCO, Oriental Herb Company. How are you doing today, Jennifer?
Good. How about you?
Good, good. As I'm really honored to have you here today. I've been taking many of your products for a while now, and I've been so impressed because there are so many things that you take and they have all of these claims, but they just don't work. But your
Mhm.
products have worked really well for me. So I know you're really busy because, like I said, your products are excellent. So I'm sure you're busy with distribution and everything. So I'm
Yeah,
really glad you were able to get on with us.
no, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I joke that I could be locked in a room for like a week just dealing with my email,
Yeah.
have people slide food under the door. But
Yeah. Well,
thank
thank you
you.
very
Yeah,
much.
great products.
I really appreciate you being here today. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about today, the reason why we have you on is to help people who may be looking at bringing a product to market and trying to get through distribution and all the other ins and outs. I've met a few people who have attempted to do so and have struggled tremendously with the process of getting that done. So I'm hoping today that our conversation will help people be able to generate a better understanding of the process of doing that. So maybe to get started, maybe you could tell us a little bit about OCO and how you came to get involved with it.
Absolutely. So OCO was founded in 1994 up in Evergreen, Colorado, in the mountains west of Denver. And the founder is an acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist. And I think he's considered one of the first American acupuncturists. So he had a really big private practice, which he actually closed 2 years ago. But he had been practicing for like 45 years.
Oh, wow.
And his wife was really kind of the driving force behind the company because she was the one who fielded the phone calls from people who said, "Hey, my friend got this formula from Don. Can you please, give me that formula?" And she's kind of like, "That's not the way Chinese medicine works. You have to like come in and get an appointment."
Mhm.
And then after getting enough of those phone calls, she was like, "Let's see if Chinese medicine can work that way. Let's see if we can build a formula that will positively affect most people." And so, of course, he's the herbalist, not her, although her knowledge of Chinese medicine is really vast. And so they came up with Cold Snap. And I think part of the origin of its creation was that their daughter was going to school too. And because you have a child, you
Yes.
put your kid in school, and it's all of a sudden this virus and this cold and this bacterial, whatever it is. And then obviously the world now is even different.
Right.
So they wanted to make something that could deeply strengthen your immune system, kind of work with what you already have and enhance it, as opposed to like this temporary boost in your system. So Cold Snap is just like a deeper level of strength. And so that was the first product that came to market. And then over the years, there were 6 other products. And we actually hope for what we call OCO's Ocho,
Uh-huh.
hoping to bring our last formula to market,
Okay.
but it's been a little stalled.
I see.
These things take time.
Right.
Um, and so, how I got involved was I was in acupuncture school. I started my master's in Chinese medicine in 2003. And when I was in the school clinic, people would come in and they would be complaining that they always got sick or they would come in sick. And we would say, "We could make you something in here in our clinic, but you should just go to Whole Foods or Natural Grocers and buy Cold Snap. It is the best thing you can take."
Yes.
And I had had an experience with it while I was managing a restaurant. And like in the restaurant business, you can't be sick.
Right.
You don't make money if you're sick. And there's just not, you can't be sick in the restaurant business. So someone had handed me a bottle when I was starting to feel off, and they said, "Just keep taking this and you'll be better tomorrow." And they were totally right. And I was, of course, really inclined to listen because I did not want to get sick. So I followed the instructions, took 2 capsules every half an hour. Next day I woke up and I was like, I'm definitely not sick. And from that day forward, I was like all in.
Yes.
And that was before acupuncture school. So I didn't even like know it was Chinese herbs. But yeah, so acupuncture school would always recommend that people try it. And then when I finished acupuncture school, there's like a 5 month window where you're not really employable because you're not licensed.
Mm.
And I had noticed on the bottle of Cold Snap that they were based in Colorado. I was living in Boulder. And so this was 2006. So this is like pre iPhone. So I had emailed them and asked them if they were hiring, told them how much I love their product. And they kind of reluctantly interviewed me because they weren't really hiring. It was like a cold call version of, will you employ me? So I went up there and I interviewed with them, and I was very, very lucky. And I got a job. I think I was making like $12 or $13 an hour. But I didn't care, in
Okay.
my mind, this
Yeah.
was like the best company. But I remember being shocked at how small the company was, because in my mind, it was like this huge, massive production. And it really, nope, everyone's tricked. It is not a massive production. Um, and then I got introduced to the 6 other formulas that OCO has.
Mm.
So didn't even know that there were other formulas.
Yeah.
And our other formulas are definitely just as good, if not better. So then fast forward to 2013. By that point, I had had 2 kids and I wasn't really working very much. Like I had stayed with a relationship with them,
Mm.
but I wasn't actively working for them anymore. But they knew that I was like a huge fan, and they knew that I really understood their product line. So they reached out and they asked me if I would buy the company. And they basically said they didn't want to sell out. They wanted it to go to someone they trusted, someone who would carry on their principles, and they were willing to work with me to make it a deal that I could work with. And at the time, I was actually really overwhelmed by that idea because I had 2 little kids, and I was like, I don't want to take this on. My ex-husband worked really long hours, and I was just like, I don't think I can do it. But then it was like, why would I pass up this opportunity? Like an opportunity of a lifetime. So anyway, that is how OCO ended up being mine. So that's been 8 years, 8.5 years. And I think Cold Snap has had national placement in Whole Foods since 96.
Oh, nice.
We have fallen out of a few regions, but that was like probably our first big placement. And then I won't even continue. You can ask your questions and I'll answer them instead of pre-answering them.
Oh no, you're totally fine. So, was some of the biggest challenges after you took over the business? Because I've seen your product and I was totally psyched when I saw it at King Supers last year, and I saw it at Vitamin Cottage also. And most of them were gone. There was just a couple left, fortunately for me, because I was able to grab one of them.
Yeah,
but but
that,
it was one of those things that I was so happy and so proud, of knowing you for seeing
yeah.
it out there. But what was it like getting started with getting those products into those stores?
Well, I mean, I'm very lucky in the way that I inherited, or not inherited, bought. I consider it inherited almost because of like just the magical nature of it. But they had a lot of existing placement when I bought the company.
Yes.
They were already in Natural Grocers, they were already in Sprouts, they were already in King Supers. I think at some point, I can't say if this is true now, but Cold Snap is the top selling herbal supplement in the Rocky Mountain region.
Mm.
So they had done such a great foundation for me, where I've always thought that it's just going to take us a nudge to get to another level. But it's hard because you want to go to another level when you're a business owner.
Right.
And going to another level means more problems, more people to work with.
Right.
In my particular world, it means possibly a different supply chain.
Hmm.
And our supply chain is really tight and really clean. And our herbs are such high quality
Yes, yes, they are.
that, if we grew to be like 20 times the size we are now,
Mhm.
would we have the same quality herbs? I don't know. I can't answer that. Um, so I think that has been a challenge, is like balancing growth and kind of wanting to stay true to our values
Mhm.
while wanting to grow. Not that I wouldn't be okay with some growth. I also think it's really hard to be a small guy in a business that is full of giant corporations.
Yes.
And I think that is probably a big challenge of anyone who's just starting out. The other part is the reality of 2021, which is online. Not that our brick and mortar stores don't count, because when you need Cold Snap, you need Cold Snap now.
Right.
Even Amazon 2-day Prime shipping is not going to be fast enough. You
Mhm.
could already be like starting to actually get sick by then. So like all of our seasoned users know that you need to take Cold Snap now.
Right.
Um, so there are a lot of challenges within there. And part of it has just been my hesitation of like, ugh, I don't want to deal with this stuff. I don't like technology. I don't like shopping online, even though I do it all, like I
Right.
like brick and mortar stores. And the founder really liked the small, independently owned retailers.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, all of those are bought up, and
Right.
there are no longer all of these mom and pop stores. There are 300 Sprouts and 300 Natural Grocers. And so, anyway, when the companies that you deal with become that large,
Mhm.
they have expectations of you to be able to perform like a larger company.
Yes.
And so sometimes it's really frustrating for me that I have to pay the same amount that some company that's owned by Procter and Gamble
Right.
has to pay for advertising.
Mhm.
Like, that just annoys me. Um,
Right. Yeah. It's huge.
so I think that we've had a challenge of being the underdog,
Mhm.
you know, which I guess we could really save ourselves in that. And we just have chosen not to pursue like a lot of investors or that type of thing. And I think that is really,
Excuse me.
bless
Sorry.
you, that's what you need to do to grow
Mhm.
in this world, is come in with a lot of money or get someone with a lot of money to work with you.
Right. Yeah, it is definitely an environment where you're at a huge disadvantage if you don't have the operating capital to be able to. It doesn't matter how great your product is, how good your idea is.
Yep.
You don't have the capital behind you. It's really hard to get a footing with anything because you got some people with enough money to just blow you clear out of the water.
It's
So,
so true. And it's just a tragic part of the industry. I think there are probably ways using online as like the first launch for smaller companies to do it.
mhm.
But it really is, you have to pay to play. Like, you have to pay now for placement in a store.
Yes.
If your product is going to take up shelf space,
Mhm.
you need to realize that you're going to have to pay for that.
Right.
I have to pay to put my product on sale in some stores,
Yes.
which I think is really interesting. I
Mhm.
have to pay, basically, I feel like I'm paying for someone to walk around and put the 20% off tag up on the shelf.
Yeah, that
But
was
then,
basically a big shocker for me when I worked for Boston Market back in the day, was the understanding that your shelf space is basically advertising, and that's the way that they were looking at it, and they were paying healthy amounts when they decided to put a prepackaged dinners uh,
mhm.
things on the market. They were paying big dollars for those to have the space, and then the higher your product was on the shelf, the more money you had to pay to be on there. So it was, yeah.
It is really true. I mean, it wasn't always that way.
Mhm.
It definitely was not that way when we started, and actually it wasn't even as much this way in the natural products industry when I bought the company.
Mm.
I mean, over the years, things have changed. And I mean, there are some regions of the country where we have to pay to demo our products in the store. So not only do I have to pay my sales rep, I have to pay the store for us to stand there. So it's just it's hard when you are a small business with no outside funding.
Right.
So I do think sometimes, like, if we were to try to enter the market now, would we be able to?
Right.
And I don't know about that. Even though I would say, and a lot of people would agree with me, that Cold Snap is the best immune support product available in the retail market nationwide.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it just works. And like, I can say that without sounding cocky because I didn't make it, you
It's
know?
it's
I
true.
didn't make it. Someone, the smartest person I know made it, not me. So, anyway, but it is, but that doesn't really count as much anymore, as much as your ability to come in strong. It's like being able to buy a house, and coming in with a strong offer. Like, you have to have money to spend on
Mhm.
all of your branding, marketing, sampling, and then I think making connections is hugely key.
Mhm.
To have
Yes.
someone like on the inside
Mhm.
who's a fan of your product,
Mhm.
and to really be able to connect with someone who can be a champion for you. I think that can still go a long way. And you have to be persistent.
Right.
I grew up really working class, and I like worked at McDonald's when I was 16, and I always waited tables. Like, uh my parents didn't ever, like, they weren't going to just give me anything. I went to college on almost a full scholarship. So I think I've always been kind of gritty and like willing to just hustle a
Yeah.
little bit, because
Right.
that's like just part of who I am.
Right.
It's just like my working class roots.
Yes.
But you have to have some level of that in this industry too. Like, I always like to hire people to work for me who've worked in the restaurant industry,
Mhm.
because I feel like those people know
Yes.
that you have to work to get paid.
Right.
And yeah, I just like that mentality.
No, I think that's great, and you bring up a very good point because that's a lot of times what people lack. Even people who have the financial backing, it's it's not like the road is just going to be paid for you. You still have to get out and grind a bit, and
Yep.
that's where a lot of people even if they have the resources, they fail because they lack that grit to, okay, I need to step back and figure this out. Things aren't going right. How do I make it better? Sort of thing. So that's a really
Yeah, it's really like the music industry or like the acting industry or something like that, where there are probably incredibly talented people who
mhm,
you've never heard of, because for whatever reason they haven't been able to have that like luck or connection or whatever that brought them to the top. And I feel like there are so many great products and great product ideas. I talk to people all the time.
mhm.
People reach out to me really regularly just to bounce ideas off or send me samples. And I see stuff where I'm like, this is amazing,
Yes.
but I don't know that it ever even makes it on the shelf because of the level of competition.
Mhm.
So I think it's like, people need to be honest with themselves,
Right.
and realize like this is an uphill battle. Unless you know someone who works in corporate, whatever,
Mhm.
um, it's likely going to be an uphill battle, and it's not necessarily going to be a reflection of like the quality of your product. And I think with like people who don't have the capital,
Mhm.
like, this is the time for innovation. There
Yes.
are so many platforms,
Mm.
especially online, where you can do things differently.
Right.
And then I also think that there's always a local market,
Mhm.
where you can do grassroots, like, you're not trying to get your product into Whole Foods nationally, but you're trying to get your product into every local coffee shop and at every local event as a sponsor, and maybe just do like online locally and just try to like build the brand up. I think it's a cool time in the world where people can do outside of the box things. They don't have to think like their measure of success is whether or not they got placement in King Supers.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and I think it's important for people to realize that sometimes these larger companies won't even look at you unless you already have traction. And how do you go about getting that traction when you're starting out? And the online, it seems like the easiest way to go. I mean, you're still going to have to make some investment there to make sure it's easy to be able to understand what the product is and to be for people to be able to purchase that product. You're basically going to be out just like you said, just kind of grinding it out until you get some sort of traction. And it seems like once you get that traction, then the bigger people might be interested in bringing your product on. But that online process is something that can't be overlooked because you may want to start with the big names, but the reality of it is you're probably, like you said, going to have to start online, building relationships, and that's something else that it seems like people miss a lot of times is that relationship piece. Because I remember someone said I don't remember the guy's name, but he said your network is your net worth. And I think a lot of people forget that piece of it, and just building those relationships, like you mentioned earlier, is how you get in when you're first starting out. You have to have those steps.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the founder of our company, the wife, Hannah, she was so skilled at doing that.
Hmm.
And she did that like we still have customers because we have customers who have been using Cold Snap for 27 years. Like literally, they're like people who don't have a cell phone, they don't use the internet, they call, they want to talk. I'm picturing them dialing from their like rotary dial phone or something. And they know Hannah.
Hmm.
They ask about her, and she did that with all the stores, and that still is really valuable.
Hmm.
And I think with that, there's a line of like authenticity and annoying, you know, of like be connecting with people.
Right.
Um, and it's tough right now because of the lack of human connection and people just going out and seeing each other face to face and really getting your product into the hands of someone who would be influential in some
Right.
way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it could be just the smallest connections. You never know who you're going to run into. But like you said, so many people are stuck behind their computers and they're not really getting out. And you're just trying to do a post on social media every now and again. And there's so many posts going through those feeds so rapidly that the chances of getting seen are pretty slim unless you're really good at doing what it is that you do. It's really challenging right now. So it's more necessary than ever to build those relationships, I
It
think.
is. And, I think there's also a part that's really valuable where you kind of create um, your own little avenue, your like niche. So
Hmm.
we have the music industry has
Hmm.
kind of like become a thing for Oko. And that is partially because my friend from high school, like a really, really good friend for 20, oh gosh, for a lot of years,
Yeah.
almost 30 years. He grew up to be a rock star, and he is the saxophone player for the band Slightly Stupid. And they're huge. They sold out Red Rocks like 14 years in a row. They're like they draw a younger crowd than me. I always feel like an old lady, but they're like I guess like a reggae inspired
Mm.
type. They are so good. So he's the saxophone player there. So I have always provided him with Cold Snap because like he's a touring musician and obviously like he cannot be sick. It's like the restaurant industry, but 10 times worse. Like
Right.
he has to show up. And he is actually, I should introduce you to him because he's just so fun to talk to. He is a master connector.
Okay.
He like forms genuine relationships with people where they really trust him because
Yeah.
he's trustworthy. And so he has introduced Cold Snap to all of these other bands, like the Dave Matthews Band.
That's
You
great.
know, just
Yeah.
that's crazy to me. And that lots of people, and he's going to continue to do that more for us. And it's always a difference when it's like a genuine reason that someone's doing something and not just for the money. It's that like snake oil salesman versus someone who like actually really, like, he full on believes in our products as being so valuable
Mhm.
that people know when he talks to them, he's not just making this up. He's
Right.
not just promoting for the sake of promoting.
Right. And there's a good reason for that. Like I said at the beginning, your products work.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. They just work. So that for us has been interesting, and we're going to continue to explore that. But I think that that's another way people have to think is like, where can they get into and like build their crowd, their tribe
Hmm.
for their product, like from within? Because people don't like to be advertised to.
Hmm.
And word of mouth marketing is still the best form of marketing.
Absolutely.
Yes, keyword searches are great and understanding SEO, but like word of mouth marketing it's the most powerful type of marketing there is.
I agree. Completely agree. All right, let's shift gears here just a little bit and talk about distribution. Now, I know right now logistics and distribution has been a nightmare for many. I don't know how it's affecting what it is that you do as far as, with the shipping being backed up and things like that. And even just on a regular basis, I don't even know, you may still have the same distribution as the previous owners, or maybe
Yeah.
you even had to switch it over. I don't know. It's just how or what do you look for in a distributor to make sure that your products are getting where they need to be?
I think the number one thing, consistency.
Hmm.
Consistency in your product, especially if it's a product that involves, raw materials,
Hmm.
which most of them do. For us, it's not a problem we've had because we have a really tight supply chain, but other companies have had issues where people are like, this isn't the same product that it used to be.
Oh yeah.
Label didn't change,
Right.
the ingredients didn't change, but something about it changed.
Right.
And people don't like that because if they really love your product, they can tell. Like,
Hmm.
we'll get calls and people will say, oh, the Cold Snap powder looks a little darker this year. Why is that?
Mm.
And because we're working with nature and plants,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
sometimes
Hmm.
things are a little darker, things
Right.
are a little lighter, things are a little more bitter, but the overall action of our formulas never change. Um, I mean, it really is a very weird time. We just wanted to introduce a larger size bottle.
Hmm.
We can't get that larger size bottle.
Just
It's like,
because of logistics or
yeah, it's just too difficult right now to have like the basics
hmm.
for your like, we had to get rid of all the little cardboard inserts that go in between our bottles and our cases
Mm.
because those were too hard to come by. um like, that's just odd. And then even like the cotton that we used to put into the bottle so when you shake it, it's not so noisy,
Hmm.
and we can't get that easily anymore, so we just like dumped it you
Hmm.
know
Yeah.
um you have to really have a trusting relationship with the people you work with. Like, we've worked with our supplier for over 30 years.
Hmm.
And originally they were a contact of the founder who just did his custom formulas. And then yeah, he just started having them make Cold Snap. But I think that people really need to consider the environment.
Hmm.
Do we want to use glass? Do we want to use plastic?
Right.
Like, I've had that conversation in my head so many times because plastic is awful. We get it.
Right.
Everyone kind of knows that it's everywhere and it's awful. And I hate the fact that my company contributes another plastic bottle to the world.
Hmm.
And then at the same time, if we use glass, it's so
Right.
much heavier
Hmm.
that than the shipping costs,
Right.
and the fuel that's required
Hmm.
increases. So I think people just really have to get all that figured out and very clear on it, because I tell you, we've just had this happen several times. We'll run out of labels.
Mm.
Nothing halts your production like running out of labels.
I
You
can.
know, it's like then you got all these bottles sitting around waiting for the labels that need to be printed. Actually, that reminds me, I better look at our labels today, because it's kind of like one of those things that keeps me up at night is like
Right.
reading the labels. Um, it's just little things like that. And then we have to do quality testing on all of our products,
Hmm.
and that can cause a delay because it's by batch. So, every, I think it's like 100,000 bottles of Cold Snap or something. And I could just be making that up. I really, I forget how many capsules it is, but then it gets tested again. It's like we making the batch of cookies, except it's
Hmm.
the batch of Cold Snap. And if the testing is delayed, that's the other thing. Uh,
Yes.
you come to a screeching halt,
Yeah.
and then your voicemail is full of people complaining at you. The shipping delays, at this point, there's nothing you can do but laugh about that,
Right.
because it's so out of my control. It's out of everyone's control.
Yes.
You
Absolutely.
know, when I ship something priority mail 2 days, I think it's actually going to be there in 2 days. And when it's not, there's very little I can do about that,
Right.
except send it again and fingers crossed this time it makes it.
Right.
So I guess
Not like it's a per company problem where it's across the board. So if you
it is.
switch companies, you're still in the same position.
Yeah, we're all in the same position, which is why like that brick and mortar placement comes in handy when
Yeah.
people don't have to wait for shipping.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think people just have to have really realistic expectations, and also set the expectations of their customers.
Mhm.
If I tell someone, and I've done this, that we're going to get your order out by Friday, and really it's 2 Fridays from then, that puts me in an odd position.
Mhm.
So I really have learned, like I say the worst case scenario, because then no one gets too upset.
Right.
When I give the
Try to
best
live
case
by-
scenario,
Yeah.
yeah, people like to be pleasantly surprised, not like so.
Yeah, you take something as simple as a pizza delivery. If they tell me it's gonna take an hour and it takes
Yeah,
30 minutes, I'm excited. But if they tell me 30 minutes and it takes an hour, you're like, oh,
yeah,
did something
exactly.
happen? You're on the phone calling them up again, and that's when the problem comes in. So I completely see that. Where
Avoiding
setting the
damage control, I guess that's what
yeah,
it
yes.
is. So,
Oh, that's good. Good stuff. Okay, so we covered the distribution, the manufacturing, and how you want to make sure that the consistency is there for your product because, like I said, that is huge. Now, if there one thing as far as maybe one or two things that you would advise someone wanting to get their product out there, what would you advise them to do today?
make friends would
Yes.
be number one. You know, be part of something where you can connect with people.
Mhm.
Like that is always just going to be your,
The number
then
one.
you don't have to pay anyone to sell your product.
Yes.
You got a bunch of unpaid people selling your product, uh,
Absolutely.
which is the best.
Yes.
So I feel like that is part of it, is like, don't try to be like the lone ranger doing it just behind a screen. Realize that connections are still important. And then the second would actually kind of be similar in some ways, is to get the help you need.
Mhm.
And I think actually you and I have maybe talked about this before, but has been a challenge for me, is that I will get in the mindset of I can do everything.
Right.
I will do all of this
Yes.
myself.
Hmm.
And then guess who's up at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, you know, every Saturday night, still working.
Yes.
Me. And it's ridiculous because the truth is I have a skill set and
Hmm.
I have some things that I'm really, really bad at.
Yes.
And why I keep trying to do things that I'm really, really bad at is just mind blowing to me. You know, there are people out there who you can ask to do things for you
Right.
and people who can help. And I think creating that team of like really recognizing strengths and weaknesses
Mhm.
and not always having people who agree with you, but people who bring an alternate perspective.
Mhm. And
Or,
sometimes we even do these we try to do everything because we think we're saving money, but at the same time, our quality of work starts to diminish so much because we're trying to juggle all of these things that we're preventing ourselves from moving the company forward because we won't just, it will be actually cheaper and life cycle costs will be cheaper to bring someone in or have someone else take care of this process for you rather than you trying to be an expert at everything.
oh, yeah. I mean, I need to remind myself of that all the time.
Mhm.
In fact, what I could really use is to sit down with someone and to have someone else tell me, Jen, stop doing this.
Yes.
Stop doing this. These are all the things you need to hire
Hmm.
people for. You know, and I think that that keeps people from burning out too.
Yes.
Because I definitely, I mean, I think I've stayed up till 12:31, like the last 3 nights working
That's,
and out of necessity.
mhm.
And it's like I'll do that sometimes for weeks and then I'm like, I can't do this.
Right.
So there's balance. Like you're never going to be the best ambassador for your product if you're exhausted and sick and, you know, grumpy.
Mhm.
So it's like you kind of have to live what you're selling to.
Yes. I completely agree. Completely agree with that. Well, thank you very much for coming on with us today to share your thoughts and your experience with us. Now, before we go, I would like to open the door for you to tell people a little bit about how they can find out more about your product or purchase your products or whatnot.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you. So we talked a lot about Cold Snap, but we actually have 7 formulas. We have a digestive formula, a sleep and anxiety formula, 2 formulas for pain, 1 formula for seasonal allergies, and then a formula for um, depression, low sexual energy, like a really uplifting formula. You can find all of our formulas online at ohco.com, OHCO.com. Cold Snap is everywhere nationwide. I mean, guess harder to find in some parts of the country than others, but in general, we have placement in every state for Cold Snap. Amazon, you know, that's like a hated word by a lot of people.
It was like the last resort.
Yeah, I know. But it is what it is.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, we caved and started working with them.
Yeah.
I guess probably 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Like because like there were 75 people selling Cold Snap on Amazon, and we're like, huh, maybe we should start selling our own product on Amazon. Um, so that's always an option. But we have Facebook, Oriental Herb Company. Our Instagram is Oriental Herb Co. But if you go to our website, you can check it out. We are so behind the times on the social media thing. We are just trying to catch up right now. But
Yes.
you can, I think if you Google Cold Snap, we still come up first. So
Awesome.
anyway, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for your time. Like I said, I know someone is going to listen to this and they're going to find some inspiration or find some way to get over a hurdle that they're experiencing right now. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. And I always encourage people to reach out to me. I'm not always the easiest to get in touch with, but I will get back to you eventually. And I'm happy to chat with people. I mean, it's like rising tide lifts all boats, right? Like
Absolutely.
I want everyone to do well.
Thank you.
All
Until
right.
next
Thanks,
time.
Eric.